From WisPolitics in Madison, you're listening to Capital Chats.
Hello, everybody. This is Kate Morton with WisPolitics.com here with a Capital Chats podcast brought to you by Spectrum. Today, I'm here with my colleague Adam Kellenhofer to talk about a conversation he had with Attorney General Josh Kaul. So, Adam, can you tell us a little bit about that conversation?
Hi, Kate. Yeah, I would love to. So, Attorney General Kaul, he is a Democrat. He just won his second term last year. We talked a little bit about the slate of fake electors and any chance of some sort of lawsuit against these slate of fake electors or any other kind of litigation. And we also talked about some other prominent ongoing litigation efforts he's involved in. So let's just get right into it. Welcome to the show. Today, I have on as our guest today, Attorney General Josh Kaul, to talk about some updates on lawsuits and some other issues going on in Wisconsin national politics. So welcome to the show, Josh.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So first question, I know you've been asked this quite a few times already, but are we going to see any charges brought against any of the fake electors involved in the 2020 election?
Well, as I've talked about before, I can't speak to anything that may be happening in the state of Wisconsin, given that we generally don't comment on or confirm or deny the existence of investigations. But what I can say is that I think it is critical that anybody who committed crimes with the goal of trying to overturn the results of any election is held accountable. And there have been, significant developments both federally with the indictment of former President Trump, as well as at the state level, most recently in Georgia. And I expect that we're going to continue to see efforts to hold people accountable moving forward.
All right. That makes sense. So with all these indictments going on with President Trump, or former President Trump, I should say, is there any possibility that if any of these charges do stick, or maybe certain ones, some of the more serious ones, if they do end up sticking with Trump, is there a possibility like Trump doesn't end up showing up on certain ballots across the country and maybe Wisconsin? Is that a possibility, or am I going too far?
Well, I think that remains to be seen. We've seen there was a analysis in a law review article that's been it hasn't been published yet, but a copy of the article is public. I understand it, and they've made certain arguments about whether Donald Trump is eligible to be on the ballot. I think that we will hear more discussion of those topics, as well as factual presentations and potentially legal presentations moving forward. So I think it's too early to say where that will end up, but certainly that's a topic that particularly recently has gotten some attention.
Yeah. I think it's an interesting one to talk about, and it'll definitely be something we'll be watching for in the future at WisPolitics. Okay, so I want to shift gears here because I know you've answered a lot of questions about the fake electors recently, but there has been actually some news in the clergy sexual abuse probe. Can you talk a little bit about what kind of the most recent events are with that probe?
Absolutely. First and foremost, our review of clergy and faith leader abuse in Wisconsin is still ongoing. We are still encouraging folks who have any information to report to our confidential reporting system. We have received over 250 reports so far, and so we continue to encourage people to provide us with information. So we are continuing to conduct the Clergy and Faith Leader Abuse Initiative, and we continue to encourage anybody who has any information to report through our confidential reporting system. We've received over 260 completed reports, and we continue to ask people to provide information if they have it. One of the things we're trying to do is to gather as much information as we can so that the report that we prepare at the end of the process is as thorough as possible. And also because we want to follow up on any information we receive if there's the possibility of a criminal investigation or of connecting a survivor with services. So the primary way we're gathering information is by encouraging people to report. But we're also trying to get information through other means if that's possible. And one of the opportunities to do that is through the legal process. And so we have moved in front of the bankruptcy court, asking to be permitted to have DOJ review documents that are under seal as part of the Archdiocese of Milwaukee's bankruptcy proceeding. As part of the bankruptcy, claims were submitted by survivors of sexual assault, and there's information about allegations of sexual assault in those sealed materials. So being able to review those would allow us to have a fuller understanding of the scope of clergy and faith leader abuse in Wisconsin, and hopefully to allow that information to inform what we do with the clergy and faith leader abuse initiative going forward.
That makes sense. Is there any kind of a timeline for when this investigation might end, or does that kind of just depend on when you stop finding issues of abuse?
We want to follow the facts wherever they lead in this matter, and we're going to let the discovery of information dictate the timeline, and not arbitrarily set a timeline in advance. So as long as we continue to believe that there's more information that we can gather, and that it makes sense to continue to pursue follow-up options, we're going to keep doing that. And once we get to a point where we feel like we've obtained as much information as we realistically can, at that point we'll complete the review. But it will be going on until that happens.
That makes sense. So I know maybe I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself here, but there are elections to worry about in the future, and there is a possibility that you maybe don't get elected in the future. If that were to happen, do you think whoever were to take the reins of the Attorney General's office, would they continue that clergy investigation, or would it kind of be up to their discretion?
It certainly would be up to the discretion of whoever the AG is. It's certainly my hope and expectation that this will be completed before the end of my current term. Of course, you never know what information we're going to find and where that will lead. And certainly if there are ongoing criminal investigations or cases, you would hope that regardless of who the AG is, they're going to continue pursuing justice in any ongoing case. But it's certainly, like I said, my hope that the main part of the initiative will be completed, well in advance of that.
Okay, so one more question for you, Attorney General Kaul. We're still going through this lawsuit on the 1849 abortion ban issue in Wisconsin. Some people are calling that now an infanticide issue and not an abortion issue. But I was hoping you could kind of clear up that issue and give us some updates about how that lawsuit's going.
Absolutely. So right now that suit is in circuit court in Dane County. We have moved for a ruling in our favor in that case. That motion is in the process of being briefed. We submitted our brief. The court asked for some additional information from some of the other plaintiffs. So I think that will be submitted soon, and then the defendants will have the opportunity to respond. But one of the things that the judge has already held in this case in rejecting the motion to dismiss that DA Urbanski filed is that she looked into what the 1849 law means, and one of her conclusions is that it does not apply in abortion cases. Now, that was not a final ruling in the case, but it's her written analysis of what the law means. And so we've argued that following that same logic, the court should issue a final judgment in our favor. I'm hopeful that will happen in the next few months. We certainly anticipate that there could be appeals, but I'm hopeful that we will have resolution soon. And we've got strong legal arguments, and I remain confident that ultimately we're going to succeed in restoring access to safe and legal abortion in Wisconsin.
All right, that makes sense. So can you just clear up what is infanticide actually? Because I don't know if people since 1849 have given that too much thought.
The statute that everybody has been referring to as the 1849 abortion ban is actually part of a statute that has more than one subsection. There's another subsection in that statute that was previously interpreted by the state Supreme Court, and the language is nearly identical to the language of the law that folks have been focused on in the abortion case. There's a small difference, but the state Supreme Court previously interpreted that very similar language to apply to infanticide and not, or feticide, they called it, and not abortion. And what that means is the somebody intentionally causing the death of a fetus without the consent of the mother. And so a consensual abortion would not be covered under that law if the same reasoning is applied to the subsection at issue in our case, what's known as the 1849 ban, as was applied to that other subsection. And that's what the judge's ruling rejecting the motion to dismiss looked to in reaching the conclusion that it did.
Okay, that makes sense. And so hypothetically, I guess, if this does happen and that 1849 ban does end up being ruled as applying only to feticide and not abortion, what does that mean for any kind of abortion restrictions in Wisconsin? Would we go back to I believe it's a 20-week ban that Scott Walker signed?
Yeah, we would effectively go back to where we were prior to Roe versus Wade being overturned. There are a series of laws that have been passed in Wisconsin over the years that regulate legal abortion. And one of the arguments we've made in this case is that those laws impliedly repealed any broad prohibition under the 1849 law against abortion. But a related argument is that the law just shouldn't be interpreted to apply to abortion at all. So if that law is interpreted that way and is found not to apply to abortion, then we would be back to the other laws on the books as the ones that regulate the situations in which abortion can be performed in Wisconsin.
All right. That actually clears that up perfectly for me. Okay, well, that's all I have time for today's podcast. So it was a pleasure to have you on, Attorney General Kaul, and I hope you have a good rest of your week.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Well, Adam, we'll have to keep a close eye on that electors issue, especially as other states bring charges with similar cases. So if our subscribers want to know more about these issues, they can head to our website at wispolitics.com.
That's right, Kate, but for now, I'm Adam Kelnhofer.
I'm Kate Morton.
Thanks for tuning in to WisPolitics Capital Chats, brought to you by Spectrum.